send this bad boy out to
YouTube Nation.
YouTube Nation. All right, and then let me share screen. All right, Colts fans, if you're jumping into this live stream here, this is what I think it's our third one, Jake, that we've done, our third live stream. Jake and I are going to be talking about some underrated Colts players. They're not really – so when I say underrated players, when I was talking to people about this, they expected guys like, Braden Smith, Kari Willis, stuff like that, which, those guys are all underrated in their own right. But we're more so focusing on underrated, like, role players for the Colts, guys who – even if their role isn't huge for the team, when they get on the field, they make an impact, and their role is very vital for this team. But, before we jump into that here, I saw Jake got some good news this week. He's joining Sports Illustrated to cover the Colts. Jake, that's pretty exciting, huh? Joining Sports Illustrated?
Yeah, man, that's major. It's a very big privilege for me. Pretty excited to get started over there. Obviously, I haven't been writing for a couple months, so it's good just to get back into it in general. But like I said online, this is Sports Illustrated was a place that I always wanted to have my name on that website someday when I knew I wanted to start writing. So pretty fortunate for that to start happening.
Yeah, definitely, man. So what kind of content are you going to kind of be putting over there? I mean, is it going to be like draft stuff, film stuff? Interview stuff, like what are you gonna try to go for that with that?
A little bit of everything. I'm not necessarily getting plugged into one hole, so I'll have really just whatever comes up. For example, the first thing I'm working on right now is my 2020 Colts fantasy preview, where I'm just looking at all of the Colts' most relevant fantasy players and what their situations are, and maybe what to expect throughout the season. That it's going to be pretty in depth. It's hard for me to stay short when I'm talking about all that, especially digging into stuff like the running backs. I just finished that section a little while ago. So it's if you want to know quite a bit about the world of Colts fantasy stuff, that should be coming out here in the next day or so. So
awesome.
Yep.
I'm not a huge fantasy guy anymore, but I'll probably check it out just to keep an eye on it and stuff.
I appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you said how big is this piece? I mean, how big are we talking here? Like a couple thousand words?
It'll be more. I mean, I have some chopping to do because I just, I've got I keep a lot of stats and crap like that plugged into stuff when I'm writing it, and then I just take away all the excess. But it's right now about a legit 2,000 words plus right now. So it'll be a little more because I'm not done. So
yeah,
like I said, it'll be in depth enough to where I might consider making it a couple different pieces, but we'll see.
That's always nice when you can kind of break it up like that and kind of not have to write much that week because you're just breaking up that one article. But those big ones are tanks, man. They're tough to write.
I mean, a lot of times people don't want to designate that much time reading one thing. So I mean, I can relate as a potential reader, but also, you very well know this. It's the stuff you work the longest and hardest on that doesn't quite seem to catch fire and get all the views. So if you spread it out a little bit, that can help.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, very excited for you in the opportunity. I didn't even know that the Colts actually had a Sports Illustrated. I haven't met who's the guy that you're gonna be working under? What's his name?
Philip B. Wilson.
Yeah, I haven't.
He's outside of Mike Chappell, he's covered the Colts longer than anyone else in the city. Okay. He was with the Star and then went on to Scout, and now he's running. It's called allcolts.com.
Nice.
Sports Illustrated they have a website for all 32 teams. So he and I are tag teaming the Colts over at SI's Colts site.
Awesome, man. Well, really excited to see all that content you guys are going to produce this year. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be really fun. Hopefully, it's a good season to cover the team. The views are good because it's a good team this year. Unlike last year, where kind of all the views kind of went down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the earlier the season kind of unofficially ends for teams, that's when your views start to drop off. So him and I were talking today. Hopefully we get into February and things are still looking up for the Colts, January, February. So a good playoff run that always sparks views quite a bit.
Oh yeah, certainly, certainly. But yeah, today talking Colts guys, we're gonna be talking about some underrated players on this Colts team. Some really underrated role players is what we're really gonna be focusing on today's stream here. So the first guy that we wanted to talk about was actually a guy who's probably gonna have probably I wouldn't say the biggest impact of these guys, but maybe the second biggest. I mean, especially with Trey Burton being out, we're going to be talking about Mo Alley Cox here. Mo Alley Cox is going to get some playing time, especially early on this season because Trey Burton's going to be out for I think they said at least a month, right? Is that what they said?
At least the first couple games.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with Burton out, Mo Alley Cox kind of slides into that tight end two role, which we did kind of see him play a little bit late last year, but he had some injuries that he was dealing with last year. I know he had a really bad thumb injury, which did definitely limit his ability as a receiver from that tight end spot. But Mo Alley Cox, I think, is a guy who can be really, really good in this league. I mean, he's still only been playing football for the last 2 years now. He was a 4-year guy at VCU, played basketball. He was a power forward, I think, for VCU. I was actually a huge VCU basketball fan back then, so
Yeah.
it was kind of
He
really
was a
cool
big guy.
seeing him. Really really cool seeing him transition to football, and especially with the Colts here. But the biggest thing that I really take away, and I know the Colts really take away too, is just his blocking ability for a guy who played basketball. We see guys like Antonio Gates, Tony Gonzalez. Those guys come to the league from playing basketball, and obviously they're there as receivers, but when it comes to the blocking aspect, they're not like elite blockers by any means. Or Mo Alley Cox is kind of the
Yeah.
other way. He's transitioning as a receiving tight end, but he's already come in as a really good blocker, and I think that's just a lot to do with his size. So right now, Jake, I guess what would kind of your assessment of Mo Alley Cox as of right now? What kind of tight end he is for this team?
Yeah. So I think you're right. With those basketball guys transitioning to becoming a tight end, which has been such not buzzword, but it's just been its own niche in the NFL since Tony Gonzalez and Antonio Gates. A lot of times those guys are kind of finesse. Not that Gonzalez and Gates were, but like those guys who teams try to make them into the next Gates or Gonzalez. Those guys always wind up being really finesse. And Mo Alley Cox is definitely a rare specimen when you consider that. Yes, he's very athletic. He has that huge catch radius and he has good hands, but his first thing that he picked up that he was really good at was blocking. You just don't see that. They try to get the most out of your athleticism first, but even last year in his second season, getting more playing time, we all thought we were going to see him, get downfield and be more of a passing threat. But God, they just needed him so much as a blocker because he's good at it, and that's just that's the role he carved out once again. And like you said, he's gonna be back into the tight end two role to start the season with Trey Burton out. I'm a little curious to see whether it's gonna be more of a run or passing role for him because no Roosevelt Nix. So in times where you're gonna see an H back or a guy floating into the backfield, we know with the Colts that's often going to be a tight end. So Jack Doyle has a ton of experience with that. Mo has experience with that. So that'll be interesting. I think Philip Rivers is really, I mean, I'm sure he already does like him, but we haven't been able to see it on game days yet. But he gives me a lot of a Ladarius Green vibe.
Yeah, that's who I was gonna say too. Yeah, I like
Yeah,
that.
when you look at Rivers' days with the Chargers, I kind of see him matching up with Mo Alley Cox that way. Green wasn't really the number one tight end in San Diego at the time, but that role and that skill set and that athleticism, I just get real Ladarius Green vibes from him, and I assume we see him take another step forward this year if he's not hampered by injuries, because I think it was both Coach Reich and Chris Ballard talked about, the stuff that Mo Alley Cox had to battle through and play through all season. we had no idea the extent of it, but he went out there and gave it his all and was a factor as a blocker and an occasional receiving threat. So if he's healthy this year, you've got to think he takes another step forward in his development.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I want to say before we jump into the film here is, I think a lot of things kind of got put on hold in this offense when Andrew Luck retired right before the season started. And one of those things, obviously injury played a part, but one of those things was Mo Cox wasn't featured as much in the passing game. And we saw in 2018, I mean, he played very, very limited snaps. And I think it was 4 or 5 catches over 15 yards. I think he had 3 catches over like 25 yards that season. So he was getting down the field. He was getting the ball. We're going to see a couple of those clips here in this video, but he was getting the ball down the field, and I think that next step was going to be taken in 2019 with Andrew Luck. Except obviously Andrew Luck retired before the season. Offense had to change a lot, and Mo Cox had to kind of stay in and block a lot more to kind of adjust for it. But getting to some of the film here and looking at his ability as a blocker, he's going to be right here in line. The Colts love using him in line because he can actually handle defensive ends and guys on the line of scrimmage. But here he's actually going to climb to the second level. He's going to climb right here to the linebacker, and he's going to able to just use that strength and knock him to the ground. And that's the biggest thing with Mo. He's strong enough to go one-on-one with defensive linemen and hold them up at the point of attack, but he's also strong enough to get to that second level and knock linebackers over, which you kind of see right here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, that's good from him not to hold. I mean, he's got enough strength there to where he's just able to he's able to control the linebacker and then just push him out of the way rather than latch on and drive him to the ground, attach to him, and possibly draw a holding call.
Yeah, absolutely. And with Mo, the biggest thing is just that strength at the point of attack. He's kind of like a lineman in a sense where, once he gets his hand on a guy, he can actually just lock him up, and he can just stand there and lock the guy up, and they're not really going to go anywhere, which we'll kind of see on this play here. But one thing I do want to talk about before we get into this clip is this tight end position that we saw here. You kind of mentioned it with that kind of fullback hybrid that the Colts like to do with their tight ends. Well, this is one thing they really like to do, which is it's a different term across the league to different schools. And so I know UCF calls it something else, but to me, this is called the sniffer tight end. It's where you're just off of the back foot of the tackle, or you can be slightly off to the back right here. And basically the sniffer tight end is going to be your lead block. It can be your lead block to the backside, lead block going forward. But the Colts love using this. I mean, they use this on over 50% of the run plays last year. Tight end in this role, and Mo Cox is perfect for it because he can come down the line and he can hold up against defensive tackle at the point of attack. And we're going to see that right here. He's going to come down and hold up this defensive tackle. And even though the defensive tackle is trying to use his hands to get by, Cox is able to hold him up here. So we're going to play this. And, just really strong at the point of attack. And he's able to seal that inside gap. And there's not many tight ends in the league that can do that. I mean, I would say Jack Doyle right now is a better blocking tight end than Mo Cox. But this is a play that Doyle probably doesn't make, right?
Yeah, and I mean, that's just nice and clean. That's good.
Yeah, it's crazy for a tight end. Again, tight ends shouldn't be able to do this. But with Ali Cox, you got a guy who's 6'4", like 260, who can move well. So he's able to get down the line right there, and that's just nasty for a tight end.
Yeah, and that tackle, he's at least a 300-pounder. That's a big boy there.
Oh yeah, 95. I think that's
Avery Jones.
I was about to say I think that's Avery Jones. Yeah,
I don't think it's Darius.
No, Darius is I don't know Darius's number, but I don't think it was Darius. Anyways, it's probably more impressive to do it against Avery Jones after Jones had a good year last year. Darius is still a free agent right now, but just that power at the point of attack to hold up a guy. I think I guess I would want to say one somewhat issue or one thing I want to see more improve from him though is the next step of driving the guy.
Yeah, he doesn't take that next step to get nasty. He does his job, but you could say he could finish more and start driving backwards.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say I want to see defensive tackles driven to the ground like this right here. Perfect, I just want to see him get a little lower in some of his blocks, and I want to see him, get these feet driving a little bit. Like here, you can see his feet kind of stand still. He moves with the guy, but it kind of stands still. But overall, just the physical ability that he has as a blocker is what makes him so good. I mean, I think the Colts said, I heard some guy I was talking to who's I guess you can call him somewhat of a source with the Colts, said that, in-house, the Colts believe Mo Alley Cox can be the best blocking tight end in football. And with his ability, he definitely can be. I mean, you can see that one day, right, Jake? He can be the best blocking tight end in football, right?
That's tough to say. Cause I mean, you got like George Kittle. I'd say he could be one of the best, but that's a tough crown to take away. But no, I see what you're saying though. I could see him being among the best. He's got the physical tools, and I've heard the same things. The team, and they even say that outwardly to the media. I don't think I've ever heard a bad thing said about Mo Alley Cox, and they always talk about the potential, the potential, the potential. And assuming they see that he is taking little incremental steps forward, that says a lot because they're always seeing more that he's capable of. So for all, I mean, he's been he's been in the league a couple years now, but it seems he might still just be kind of scratching the surface.
Yeah, for sure. And then one more blocking clip here before we get into some of his receiving clips from 2018. This is going to be a really impressive block here because they're going to ask him to seal this defensive end. And this is going to be Yannick Ngakoue. So, this is not a guy who's a scrub whatsoever. But you can just see from here, I mean, he just controls that block. I mean, Ngakoue just isn't able to do anything. Obviously, Marlon Mack kind of does the rest on this play here, and it's his highlight. But again, just his ability at the point of attack, I think, against defensive ends, defensive tackles, makes him such an asset, especially in this offense, because they ask their tight ends to do so much in blocking. And Alley Cox, I think, when he gets that playing time early in the year, especially with Burton out, that's going to really help the Colts running game. I mean, he was big in this game here when they ran for 260 against the Jaguars.
Yep, and I mean that's the week one opponent right now, and that's a team that no Calais Campbell, no Ronnie Harrison, 36 there. God, who else have they lost? Everyone, AJ Boye.
Yeah.
That defense is going to be a little unrecognizable.
Yeah, they got a couple rookies in there like Caleb Von Chison and
I love him though. I think
yeah.
him with Josh Allen, looking at that in another year or two, that's not going to be ideal to face that for a quarterback.
Yeah, they'll have him and CJ Henderson coming in, some
Mhm.
rookies. And I think they also got Joe Schobert this offseason too. So they did get some good players, but personally to me, I think those three more so help their pass defense. I don't
Yeah.
know what those three are going to do against the Colts running game in week one, especially with Jonathan Taylor back there now, fresher Marlon Mack. I just think week one, it could be a bloodbath on the ground for the Colts against the Jaguars.
I could see that. It's going to be a young team, and what they've lost, it doesn't really seem like they've had the pieces there to quite replace that. I might be totally wrong. I don't know. I know they're trying to load up on draft capital, but that every move they make, it looks like a stronger matchup for the Colts in week one.
Nate Kent says we should talk about Ashton Doolin. There's not really much. There's not much clips to talk about with Ashton Doolin. I mean, my interview with him's on there, Nate. If you want to go talk to him, if you want to go see me talking with him, yeah, I love Ashton Doolin. I wish he had more clips last year. I do love his. What are you doing? Did you do a dad joke? You're already getting
Yeah,
the dad jokes ready.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah. I will say I hate that there's no preseason. I understand it totally, but I'm not one of those people that hates the preseason. I do think that we got robbed of seeing an Ashton Doolin, Darius Fountain preseason.
Oh, dude. So, yeah, it would have been fun. I didn't hear much about Ashton throughout the preseason. Any of has Andrew or anybody been talking about Ashton Doolin to you? Have you heard anything about him?
I think from the few things I've read, camp wrap ups and everything, Doolin seemed to have a decent camp. Not totally like standing out, but just doing everything right,
Yeah,
and doing what's asked of him, and getting some run with the twos and stuff like that. He's a very good special teams player. So, as far as I know, he's been meeting expectations.
need more gunner takes. Honestly, if they could make us a pure position just for gunner, Ashton Doolin would be a lock on this team. I mean, he was the second best gunner on the team last year. George Odom was a stud on the other side, but I mean, he was the other gunner. He was a stud on the other side.
Chris Milton was a hell of a gunner too.
Yeah, Doolin. So what I like about Doolin, I was talking to, we get off topic every time with these,
Yeah,
but
that's okay.
what I like about Doolin is I talked to Zach Pascal about him, and Pascal was telling me that he sees so much of himself in Doolin, and if you look at the guys, I mean, very very similar stories. You know, came from smaller schools. I mean, Pascal I think has the all-time receiving record at ODU for receptions and receiving yards in a career. Doolin, even though it was a much smaller school in Malone, same exact thing. Big special
Mhm.
teamers in college. They came up to the NFL and they were just guys who are kind of like sponges and doing everything, just pure special teams guys who kind of work their way. So I think Doolin can be a guy like Zach Pascal. I mean, he's actually more athletic than Pascal, even though Pascal's a pretty good athlete too. Um,
He
but
was
yeah, I
a
think.
he was a real fast guy coming out, wasn't he, Doolin?
Oh yeah, Doolin. So he actually has. It's actually funny. So Malone shut down almost all of their sports programs, right? Like they shut down football and they shut down a couple others. And so Doolin's gonna like left that school with like almost every single receiving record, almost every single track record at their school too. So he has like every like he's like the best athlete in the history of that college. Given they were Division
Nice.
three and he's playing in the NFL, so obviously, but um, yeah, he's a freaky athlete. I think he ran a 4.4 flat, and he's like 6'2", so he's got pretty good size for running a 4.4 flat.
Yeah,
Um,
he fits that young Colts receiver thing, size, speed.
Yeah, I think from what I've heard from a couple people, I think him, I think he has a chance, obviously, to make the roster. But I think what we'll probably see is him and Marcus Johnson as the practice squad guys, which, hopefully they can make it through. There's a lot of injuries across the league at receiving groups. Doolin might be a guy that other teams look at. Johnson, I think other teams will definitely look at. But yeah, I think we'll see both those guys on the practice squad this year. I think they'll be with the Colts in some capacity. And I wouldn't be shocked if they both got up to the roster this year. But
What's the veteran eligibility for the practice squad? I know things are a little different now. Is
you
that
can
right?
have you can have up to four guys with any amount of experience in the league. So
Oh,
you can
okay.
have like 40-year-old dudes on the practice squad this year,
Jesus. All right.
as long as you have four of them. So that's why I think a guy like Marcus Johnson, I think he's been in the league for about 4 or 5 years now. I think he'll be a guy who's going to be on the practice squad as well. Maybe we could see a guy. I've heard people throw out around the name Sheldon Day because he hasn't practiced all preseason, but
Yeah.
or all off season. But we'll have to see. There's hundreds of things they can do with this. 16-man practice squad. Uh, I mean, guys still need to go through waivers, so it's not as easy as like putting a guy like Eason on the protected part of the practice squad.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's gonna be really interesting. I'm curious how the heck these teams are gonna navigate it, because the IR thing is still the same too. Like a guy like Trey Burton, right? You can return any guy off of IR after 3 weeks, I think, or after week three.
Mhm.
So they could put Burton on IR, but they have to wait. They have to keep him on the opening roster, and then they can put him on IR. So that takes up a spot. So it's just really interesting what these teams are going to have to do with the roster this year. But I wish all these guys can make it. I wish they could have 80 guys making it. That would be nice.
Yeah, I would have thought they would have had a little more of a bloated roster this year, but maybe not.
Yeah. But anyway, getting back to Marley Cox here, we're going to talk a little bit about his receiving ability. And right here, he's going to be at the bottom of the screen. This is going to be a play that the Colts loved running a lot in 2018. Didn't really do it much last year. And I think, again, that was because of the quarterback change. It really wasn't a play that Brissett was going to find success with. But it's kind of like the tight end cross is what they do. I think this is Ryan Hewitt down here, actually. So,
I
yeah,
love
really
that
weird.
formation.
Yeah, really. I mean, super heavy formation here. But it's going to be one tight end going out, one tight end going in, and you're trying to kind of put defenders into awkward spots and get the matchups you want. But Ali Cox is right here on the bottom, and this is his biggest catch of the season, working against Jamal Adams here. Actually, no, this is just him. So it's not even the tight end cross; actually just him doing it out. But yeah, he's going against Jamal Adams right here. Superstar safety in this league. Gets on top of the route there, and he's able to just use his physicality, and Adams isn't able to make anything on the play. And I think this is the potential that we could see with Ali Cox down the field. Just it
Yeah.
doesn't need to be jump ball 1-on-1 like everything is super contested. But I think just giving him a chance when he has a step on a guy like this, even with a better ball, that ball could have been out here and he could have been running a little bit more. But uh,
Yeah.
I think this is a potential you could see with him more as a vertical threat. And this is kind of one I want to see with Phillip Rivers. Can they get him down the field a little bit to make some plays in the passing game?
I agree. I think a quarterback that has a little more willingness to throw downfield like Luck and Rivers, you could really unlock a little more with Ali Cox because Um, there, if I remember correctly, there was at least one or two near misses Luck and Ali Cox had that were
Mhm.
incompletions. That would have been really nice. But I think in general, Ali Cox just wasn't able to bring him in. But I remember there would have been a couple that would have caused him even more buzz. Because I mean, he got buzz after like I think he only had like 7 receptions in 2018, but they were enough to really catch people's attention. Um,
Well,
so
he had
yeah,
like, yeah, he was good. He was really good as
yeah,
rookie. Like, it was always in flashes. It was just little flashes.
yeah. I
But
think we could see a little more of that this year
yeah,
if they get him downfield more. But again, we'll see with Burton out. Who knows? And him being the second tight end, who
yeah,
knows how much he's going to be the primary blocker.
yeah. And then the other big thing I want to see with the passing game with Ali Cox is, it doesn't need to be vertical passes to him. Right here he's right here, right here he's right here, right here at the top of the screen. He's lined up again in line, so it's kind of saying like it's going to be a run formation. So the Titans are kind of coming up. But what I love about Ali Cox is just that power. That power we talked about in the blocking game makes him a freaking beast after the catch. I think over
Yeah,
half of his receiving yards in the NFL, even though it's not that many, it's only like 200 yards receiving, but over half of them are yards after catch. And for a tight end, that's not a huge thing. Tight ends usually catch it and go down, catch it, the kind of possession guys. Ali Cox runs through guys here. I mean, this is a 26-yard
yeah,
catch, and this is 18 yards after contact. I mean, he catches it right here, and then 6 yards he's engaged, and he's just dragging a linebacker. I mean, that's a
yeah.
linebacker.
That
That's
is
not.
that's was Wesley Woodyard was that?
Yeah, yeah. That's Wesley Woodyard.
That's a veteran linebacker who's probably got at least 800-900 tackles on his resume in his career. And yeah, I love that. I just love that about him. That's the stuff you see from George Kittle and Travis Kelsey. Not trying to compare him with those guys necessarily, but they try to pick up yards after the catch, and they realize they have size and power, and they can use it to their advantage with the ball in their hands. You
Yeah,
just Some guys just don't realize the capabilities they have after the catch, and he realizes that he'll even lower his shoulder down. So
yeah.
I
There was
definitely love that about him.
there was a play last year against the Steelers. It was like a third and like 14 or something, or third and 12. And they dumped it down to him for like a 2-yard check down. And he ran through like 3 defenders and fell forward for the first. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just, he's a very, very powerful guy. And I think if you use him underneath and you can use him in those check down games, like Naeem Hines, if you check it down to him, he can make a guy miss and make some extra yards. A guy like Ali Cox, you can dump it down to him. He's going to fall forward every single time. There's
Mhm.
nobody in this league who can knock him backwards. He's
Yeah.
that strong. So I think getting him even involved in those underneath routes, I think that can be a big bonus for this Colts offense. But one more play from Mo Cox, we're going to jump to our
The
next
catch.
our next underrated guy, and this is actually the tight end crossing, in and out route here, post and flag route.
You
And
can't not show this play.
I was doing 5 for every single guy, right? I did 5 for Ali Cox, and I was like, man, I want to just throw the Raiders one in there though, just to
Have to.
we have to, yeah.
It
So
shows you his it shows you the things he's capable of.
exactly, exactly. And what I love about this play here, especially with the confidence that Luck throws here, but this play is designed to get this safety guessing one way. So with Doyle going in, Ali Cox going out, whichever way the safety steps first, Luck is throwing the other way.
Yeah.
It's about putting the safety in a bind. We saw the same exact play against the Bills in the red zone the same season. But you'll see this safety. I don't know if you can see him from this angle, but he steps in, or he's actually playing more inside, and Ali Cox is outside, and he just makes just an unreal play. I have the other angle as well, so we can see more of the one-handed catch as well. But this is what he can be in this league. I'm not saying he's going to be the superstar elite, catches, but he can
Yeah.
make plays like this on the ball. And yeah, this is just kind of his peak that we saw right here on this play. It's insane.
Yeah. So that obviously is a freak play, and guys aren't going to make that 10 times out of 10. But just to put it in perspective for some people, I've been face to face with Mo before. His hands are enormous. Like they are huge. Okay. So like that he's the kind of guy where he can stick his hand up in the air like that and the ball hits and just dies. It
Mm-hmm.
hits his hand, it dies and just sits there in his palm because his hands are enormous. And, especially if you're able to get two hands on the ball, then, see you later. You're just going to catch it every time. But that's why he's capable of stuff like that. And that play specifically, that's basically like, with his basketball background, that's basically a guard lobbing it up to him over the guy defending him into the paint.
Yeah.
That's instincts for a guy like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, I just think he's been a really good asset for this team in the last 2 years. Just a really key role player. But one thing I want to ask you at the end of each of these, before we jump to the next guy on each one, is, right now he's a very key role player for this team. Obviously the Colts value him very much, and he's going to make some plays this year. But what does he really need to improve in his game to go from, key role player to just key player overall, or even a starter eventually down the line?
So obviously his abilities as a blocker have kind of, I think, taken away from how much they've used him in the passing game. But at the same time, that doesn't mean there's not things he can improve on. I think he could be a little more of a convincing route runner at times,
Mm-hmm.
and that comes with experience and coaching and practice. Just little nuances like looking off the defender, using your eyes to manipulate guys, just things like that. At a guy's certain size and body composition, like it is what it is in terms of like hip flexibility and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
um, there's stuff everyone can do to improve that, just little details, I'm sure. But then like also you said, keeping your feet pumping and like driving while blocking, finishing more often. Those strong hands do help him get locked onto guys, but you don't always see him finish that off and stay on them the whole time. He might try to toss them aside, or once the running back is beyond his zone, maybe let up. And, a guy like Quentin, for example, doesn't do that. Quentin tries to put the guy's half of his body into the dirt. So just kind of, that's the easy answers, for easy, quick answers for some things he could tidy up.
Yeah, for sure. I think, the sky's the limit for him. And I think he's going to be a really good player in this league, though. Hopefully, he's not a role player for much longer. Hopefully they can get, make it like a true two tight end system with him and Jack Doyle, maybe go to some more 12 personnel down the line like the Eagles do. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to be just a really good player for this team for a long time. And I think he's, again, like you said, he's been in this league for a while. I think he's 26, 27 years old now. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
because he
still
was
think,
on the practice squad for a year or so first.
yeah.
Like he's only going into his third year of actually playing, but he was around for a little while before that.
Yeah, I think he was in the practice squad for like 2 seasons
Mm.
before. So, yeah, I just think the sky's the limit with this guy, though. I really think he's only scratching the surface, even though he's, 26, 27. I think he's just scratching the surface of what he can be. But we're going to jump to another guy here who we're staying on the offense side of the ball. And, I won't say this guy is like super, super potential, like to be an elite player in this league. But from day one that he came to this team, he's been the same player. And not saying that he hasn't gotten better, but he's just been at this same level since, the first day he stepped on. That's going to be Jordan Wilkins here, the running back. Obviously he's going to be the fourth string back this year. If he makes the team. I mean, I'm assuming he's making the team. I mean, have you heard anything whatsoever about him maybe not making this team? I think the Roosevelt Knicks thing is probably confirmation he's making the team, though, right?
Yeah, no, I haven't heard anything like that. And like you said, that with Roosevelt Nix, that definitely opens things up, because even though Nix was a fullback, that's, I'm sure coaches still count that towards their backfield or running back numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think they'd really be opposed to four running backs, especially with how much Wilkins plays special teams.
Yeah.
That's a huge feather in his cap for him staying on the team. Um, so yeah, I haven't heard one way or the other, but as you know, he always does his job, and he does enough to make things interesting for sure. And without Nix, I would say four running backs is a pretty good possibility.
Yeah, and just for anyone who thinks Wilkins might be cut here in the next couple of days, the Colts, I think each of the last two, maybe 3 seasons, I don't know if 2017, but at least the last 2 seasons, have kept four running backs on the opening day roster. And for most of the season, they've kept four running backs. Last year it was Jonathan Williams for a majority of the year. I think the year before that, it was Jonathan Williams for a good bit of the year as well. And even Robert Turbin early in the season. So, they've kept 4 running backs a lot. And I think a guy with Wilkins' talent, you can't really cut. But Jake, before we jump into this film, what really pops out about Jordan Wilkins to you that makes him such a good role player for this team?
Uh, for me, with him, it's always been about vision and balance. Um, he his feet kind of have their own little brains too, it seems like, and he's
Mm-hmm.
just got that balance to his eyes and feet are totally in sync, and he does not go down easily at all, and it just seems like he finds those tiniest creases to go through and finds daylight. I'm looking at the specific stats here, but last year, for his amount of carries, which I think was 51,
Mm-hmm.
he was number 1 in the NFL in yards per carry. He had 51 attempts, 307 yards for 6 yards per carry. Number 1 of any running back in the league with at least 51 carries. And 51 is an okay sample size. And that's not a fluke either, because in 2018, he had 60 attempts and he had 5.6 yards per attempt, which was tied for second in the league. So he's been in the league 2 years, and his first year in the league was tied for second in yards per attempt. Second year was first. So the guy, he's one of those guys you just want to see what he would be able to do with like 3-4 games in a row of at least 15 carries. Like, in my opinion, I've always been such a big Jordan Wilkins fan. I think he could be a huge contributor. But the Colts obviously kind of have an embarrassment of riches in the backfield. But I mean, the NFL is a business. It's a numbers game at some positions. If he were to go somewhere else, like somewhere that needed a running back, like Jacksonville, for example, I think he could lead their backfield easily.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Raquel Armstead, Divino Zigbo, I would put Jordan Wilkins at the top of their list. Um, with that being said, you obviously hope the Colts hang on to him because he's very valuable and he obviously performs when given the opportunity. But he's also, again, a very valuable special teams contributor. You see him out there all the time, either putting pressure on the returner or making the tackle, or providing good blocks for the punt returners and kick returners. So I'm a big fan. Um, there's obviously something that the coaches see. They don't they've had plenty of opportunities to cut him from the team.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's been a depth running back, but they just see something where they want this guy around.
Yeah. And I think most of the people, people who are watching this and people who follow the team, I think most people see the same things with him. I think, when you look at a guy like Jordan Wilkins, it's like a lot of what you just said at the beginning there. It's all about vision and patience and decisiveness. I will honestly say, I think outside of maybe guys like Matt Forte and Arian Foster of a couple years ago, who are guys who I think he compares pretty favorably to, I've never really seen a guy who, no matter what run it is, like no matter if it's going to be a 1 yard run for him or a 50-yard run, every play looks so decisive. Like he knows the right hole to hit every single. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I've ever seen him miss a hole.
He doesn't have wasted motion.
No, never, never. Like if you ever see him stepping, away from the hole he's going, it's to set up, it's to set up a defender like a linebacker or something like that, to set them
Mm-hmm.
up for what he's trying to do, which we'll see in, I think, one of the clips here. He does something like that, but every single thing he does is just so planned and so meticulous. I mean, he's like a master of his craft when it comes to being decisive and finding the right hole. And that's why he's, I think the official stat is over the last 2 years, any running back of over 100 carries, he has the most yards per carry in the NFL as well,
Mm-hmm.
to go along with the ones that you were saying. So yeah, just so much of what he does in that regard, in the regards of decisiveness and vision and find the correct hole. I mean, he's just elite in that regard. And that's why I think why the Colts have been wanting to keep him. I think they could keep him even, going into next year if Marlon Mack is the one who departs. They could keep him as the second back behind Jonathan Taylor, maybe. Is just that ability right there. It's just always getting those positive yards. And, the Colts offense is predicated on staying ahead of the sticks. And a guy like Jordan Wilkins, almost every time he touches the ball, he's keeping you ahead of the sticks. But we're going to look a little bit right here. I think this play is again, just a perfect example of that. It's a stretch play to the left. And he sidesteps this one right here. The guy gets instant penetration. He's able to sidestep it into the backfield, plant his foot, and get up field, and 1 yard line. That's kind of been the story of his career at this point. He's getting tackled at the 1 yard line. I think he only has 2 rushing touchdowns in his career so far with the Colts, and I think I counted it once. I think he's been tackled inside the 5 like 7 or 8 times the last 2 seasons. And he also had 1 touchdown against the Titans late last year that was called back on the penalty too. So he could have had 10, 11 touchdowns so far in his career, but he's currently at like 2. But I mean, right here, it's just so decisive. Everything right here, he avoids this block here in the backfield, just plants his foot and gets vertical, and is almost able to score here. I mean, everything just looks so planned. Even if something's breaking down around him, everything looks planned on every single run with him. Yeah, I mean,
and he could have split left, because the first thing that kind of pops out in that is that there may have been something to pop outside to the left, but then that quickly closes once the safety comes up right there and he cuts right back inside.
Mm-hmm.
But again, no wasted motion. He didn't dilly dally and think about it forever. He just hit that jump cut and went back in.
Yeah, it's funny because you'll see clips where he'll be hesitating in the backfield and then he'll find that hole. But you'll see other clips where he takes 1 step and he goes. I think this is actually a really good example of it right here.
Yeah, it's a long run against Tennessee. Yeah,
we'll jump into it here. But the first thing I want to point out about this play, because I think it's one of the most impressive things I saw from a running back on the Colts last year, is watch his eyes at the start of this play, right? So he has his eyes, working this way. And you can see, look, he's looking this way right here. He's getting the linebacker to commit this way.
Kevin Byard right there, yeah.
But he knows this is his hole, and he knows this is where he's going to hit. I mean, that is a huge hole. But he's getting Byard to commit right here. He's getting Rashawn Evans to kind of cheat that way a little bit. So he's looking that way, and then he hits hard, and he's gone. Almost able to score. I think this is another one where he gets tackled inside.
Yeah.
Just
poor guy.
Every single one, it's tackled inside the 5 here. But again, it's just being the master of his craft at that kind of area of his game. Is he's able to set up plays for himself, and then he knows when to plant that foot and just go. And everything right here. I mean, this was the game-winning play right here. The Colts, the Colts needed this play right here. Big play was really what had a chance to win them this one, and he was able to kind of make it happen for them in this game.
Jack Doyle really came in clutch there on just right at the last second to help make that cut possible. Right there.
Yep, that's that sniffer block right there.
Harold Landry, yeah.
Yeah, that sniffer block coming down. They're leaving this defender unblocked because they expect him to make that play, and then he's able to go. I mean, it's a beautifully drawn up play, but it's definitely made by Wilkins setting up with his eyes and then planting his foot and going. And that's a type of play right there where I love Marlon Mack. I think Marlon Mack's a great running back. I don't know if he sets up that play the way that Wilkins does. And I don't know if it has that much success if another back is in that role right there. And I think that's where Wilkins, again, is just bring that value that the Colts definitely need out of the running back group, is just bringing that kind of level of understanding at the running back position. All right, so we're going to get to this next play here. And again, it's just everything's patient. He hesitates in the backfield to set it up, gets outside, gets Luke Kuechly missing at the sideline there.
Luke who?
Luke Kuechly.
More like Hook Kuechly.
Oh man, I mean,
just kidding. Congratulations on a great career, Luke Kuechly.
Hall of Famer, probably, right?
Should be. I don't think just because of a guy's career has to be short, it can't be a Hall of Famer.
I think if you're the best in the league at your position for years, you should be a Hall of Famer. I think that's what
like he became elite as a rookie, and basically from there on out until he retired was considered the best linebacker in the NFL until he left.
Yeah, I think he probably retired because Jordan Wilkins juked him out of his shoes here.
Likely he was like, I don't have it anymore. That was embarrassing.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. This third string running back juking me out of my shoes. I gotta. It's a nice play, and this is another one just to show the decisiveness here. Kind God, I mean, he can do both. You know, he can be patient. He can make guys miss an open field, and then you get plays like this where he just hits the hole and goes, just gone. And again, tackled at the 1 yard line,
Boom.
and tackled the
Yeah,
one.
poor guy. If he just ran a 4.4 or something, he'd have at least a few more touchdowns in his career.
If he honestly, if he was a little faster, I think we'd be calling him like he'd be like Arian Foster was. I mean, he does
Yeah.
everything very similar to Arian Foster, even from his running styles, that kind of galloping, like long stride, where just
Arian Foster in the open field, I don't know why he had such a unique stride. I
mm-hmm.
don't I don't know how to explain it. I like Wilkins' stride. It's so smooth, but then inside the 5 yard line. We got to add a dive to his repertoire, or like lower the shoulder and just drive inside of that last defender.
It's always fun.
Like
Like,
just lower, and because he could take Trey Boston.
yeah, yeah, he definitely could have. Well, it's funny. Like I talked to Jonathan Williams earlier this off season,
Mm-hmm.
and you know the big play against Jacksonville where he had like that
His like
40 something
40
run.
40 yard catch or something.
No, the 48-yard run.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And towards the end of the run, there was a safety pursuing, and he tried to stop and go and cut back. And when he was telling me, he was like, "Man, the big thing is like on those big plays, like even back in college, just like you just overthink it. You know,
Yeah,
you
because you
know,
have so much time. There's like 5 seconds while you're just developing a plan in your head, and it does not work out ever.
yeah. So you always have to overthink it. Like, oh, should I cut back? Should I run him over? Should I stiff arm? So it's just, I'm assuming that's just what's happening on some of these. I mean, the Titans one, I don't know what he could have done. He just got caught. But this one, like, yeah, he just didn't. I don't know. I don't even know what different. I mean, he scores if it's not for the penalty that Boston commits. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, did he horse collar him? Because I remember that being a real awkward tackle.
Yeah, that was a horse collar.
Yeah,
That's what they call it on that. So yeah, I mean, he got brought down. I mean, he honestly, it looked like he scored anyway. But
it was close.
yeah, I mean, it's just right there on the line. But yeah, I mean, as a runner, you know, we could show 100 clips like this where it's just silky smooth, decisive vision. Uh, I just think he kind of brings it all as a running back, you know, in those terms. You know, he's not going to be the elite athlete that's going to, you know, run by guys or he's going to juke guys out of their shoes like Marlon Mack or even bowl over guys like Jonathan Taylor is going to do this year. But, you know, he's going to bring that base value with his vision, with his decisiveness. And he's going to get those 5-6 yards for every carry. And he's going to break off some big ones every now and then too. So, yeah, I really like what he brings to this team as the, you know, the fourth running back, especially this year, you know?
Yeah, it really just goes to show you how good the Colts have it in their backfield that a guy like Wilkins is like fourth on the depth chart, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can look at it a little differently. Like last year, he would have technically been third, but really he was kind of second because it was based on early down carries. But I truly think if he was in another backfield and made the feature back, I really think he'd be very, very productive. Again, the Colts are very fortunate to have that kind of depth at running back.
Yeah. I do want to ask you, before we get to this last clip of him here, which I think is an area that he could be used more. I think I asked you this on another stream too. If the Colts don't re-sign Marlon Mack, right, which is definitely a possibility. If Marlon Mack has a good season, he could get $8 to $10 million from somebody else on the open market for sure. Even though running backs aren't getting paid that much nowadays, you know, if he has another 1,000-yard campaign or something, you know, he can get a nice little payday from someone else.
Mm-hmm.
How confident would you feel in the backfield of, you know, maybe Taylor being the lead guy or being the 1A, and then you have Wilkins kind of being either the complementary guy or being like the 1B? How would you feel pretty confident in that duo?
As runners, yes. I would want to know how Coach Rathman felt about pass protection.
Yeah. Well, that's actually what we're going to talk about right here. I actually
Yeah.
think Wilkins can be a good pass protector.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You would expect Taylor to be the bell cow who's seeing most of the snaps.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna see here coming up how Taylor progresses as a rookie in the passing game, both as a pass protector and receiver. We already know Wilkins is kind of ahead of that pace
Mm-hmm.
in his first couple years. Um, but it seems to me like, other than third and short, it would be Jordan Wilkins and Nyheim Hines carrying that load on third down pretty
Yeah.
exclusively.
Yeah. Which would be a really interesting I mean, that's kind of a lot of what Wisconsin. I actually recently watched a lot of what Wisconsin did last year. I was
Mm,
watching a lot of their stuff because I was cutting up some Taylor stuff. And, when Taylor was in there to pass protect, I didn't see too many. I think when he ID'd the guy he had to pick up, you saw a lot of really, really good things in
yeah.
pass pro from him.
I think he's very capable. I'm not worried about his growth there.
Yeah.
I I think he's very smart. I think he tries. I you see the gears they're turning. You see the capability.
Mhm.
I just think it's something he needs more practice at.
Yes.
Talking to him, he's a very bright guy. He's a football junkie. He wants to get better at everything he does. I don't worry about him progressing at all. It all seems to be there. I just think he needs to have more experience doing it.
Yeah.
Same with pass catching. There was a buzz, over the last week or so about some drop passes, but Marlon Mack, in my opinion, was the same way when he got here. He wasn't a
Mhm.
natural hands catcher. Even when he caught the ball, there were a lot of bobbles, and it just wasn't cleanly brought in all the time. Um, but over the next couple years, he started to get a little more involved, whether it be in practice or in the game, and you just saw things come about more naturally. And I think that's probably what will happen with Taylor. So by year two with Taylor, I would imagine he would be able to handle a lot more third down responsibilities. Um, but in a very long roundabout way to finally come back around to your question, I think I would be comfortable with if Marlon Mack were to go somewhere else in 2021 with Taylor, Wilkins, and Hines. And I imagine you add a rookie through the draft late or an undrafted guy. But I,
Yeah.
as a running back group, I would be okay with that.
Yeah.
They still bring everything you need.
Yeah, for sure. And then this last clip here, I just wanted to show Wilkins and pass pro because that's what we're talking about here. I think this is an area that Wilkins can be used more in. I think he IDs really well. I mean, that's just an outstanding block right there on a blitzing linebacker. That's Milano too. Milano's one of the better young linebackers in the league. IDs
Mm-hmm.
it really well, and he's able to step up and make a play, but he just doesn't get many pass blocking opportunities. I think he was the highest graded pass blocker running back of all the running backs for the last 2 years for the Colts.
Okay.
It's only been like 30 reps, so it's not many.
Right, because he's mostly an early down guy. So aside from the games that Marlon Mack has missed and Wilkins has been like the featured between the tackles guy, he really hasn't had a ton of third down pass pro experience.
Yeah, yeah, but I think that's an area he can definitely get better. But I do want to ask you the question that I asked you at the end of Milwaukee Cox. What's the thing that you think Jordan Wilkins has to get better at to become, to go from a key role player to maybe a key starter or a key player overall for this team?
I honestly, I wish I knew. I've kind of been asking myself for a while, what does he have to do to get on the field a little more? I really don't know. I think as a runner, he is who he is, and it's very usable. Um, I don't know. You can't really ask a guy to get like faster or anything like that. And
Mm-hmm.
guys like him rely on their vision, patience, and balance, anyways. Um, God, I really don't know because I think he catches the ball well too. He's had a fumble or two here or there. You'd
Yeah.
maybe point at ball security.
He seemed to kind of
Um,
improve that this last year, though. He didn't really have any concerns with that last year. It was a lot of
yeah,
his rookie year.
I think largely what it is with other guys being, getting more playing time or being the starter is it's not so much about him. It's just like what those other guys bring.
Yeah.
Like Marlon Mack can be so explosive. Jonathan Taylor can potentially be the total package.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just what those other guys offer. I think they probably love what they have in him as a runner. And if they had to use him for a stretch of 3 or so games, I think they'd be fine with that. But I don't know. I'm really not sure. Did you have anything you thought of?
Honestly, I just think everything that he can improve on is something that's not really improvable. Like again, like it's
Yeah.
the speed, it's the just explosiveness, and that's just not something that's, at this point in his life. I mean, he's what, 24 years old, I think, 25 years old.
Hmm.
That's not something he's going to get much better at. But I just think with him, you have a very, very, very solid running back, and especially in today's NFL climate when it comes to running backs. Running backs are so devalued. Having a guy like him who can just do everything at a very good level, and it can help you move on from a guy like Marlon Mack who's going to get big money on the market. You can keep your youngster that you just drafted, and you can complement him really well with a guy who kind of does it all very well too. So I think he's got a good future here with the Colts. I don't know if it's going to be, I don't know if it's going to be just for this year and then he'll move on and they'll re-sign Mack, or whatever it's going to be. But I
Hmm.
do really like what he can be for this team if he gets any more chances. But we're going to go through these next two guys a little bit quicker because I think we've already been on here for like an hour. So we're going to kind of
That's how
try to
we do it.
wrap it up a tad. That's us going off topic like we do. But these defenders we're going to talk about here. The first one is Akadem Muhammad, and I think he's been getting some buzz in training camp this past week. Uh,
Yeah.
but I mean, that's just who he is. It doesn't shock me whatsoever. He kind of flies under the radar. But kind of to quote what he told me when I talked to him this offseason is, the way the NFL works is they're just some guys who are role players. I mean, and he kind of accepted that early on in his career. Obviously, he makes some very nice, highlight level plays, but in the NFL, there's some guys who just go out there and do their role, do their dirty work, and they don't get the recognition. And I think Al-Qadim Muhammad is a guy who kind of fits that bill perfectly. I mean, he doesn't really
Mm.
get the recognition for what he does, but a lot of what he does is a very positive impact on this team. And, he plays a good amount of snaps for a reason.
Edge defenders who don't get a lot of sacks are just classically, um, they're just not, they're not regarded high enough. And he's kind of like that, just like Jabal Sheard,
Mm-hmm.
which I see him being a little more of a Jabal Sheard this year. Um, you could say he's probably a better run defender than a pure pass rusher.
Yeah.
I think he does both pretty well. I think he does put pressure on the quarterback, and pass rushing worth doesn't just come down to pure sacks. It comes down, pressures, how often you're affecting the pocket, things like that. I think he's pretty decent, well-rounded defensive end. He's definitely worked his way up from where he was initially with the Saints. Um, but I like that. I like a guy that can embrace that he's a role player, because you can really lean into it and be an effective role player. Not everyone is Justin Houston or Von Miller, this or that. You can be an effective edge defender. And the Colts believe he can be a starter. He's started several games for them over the last couple of years. So even
Yeah.
when he hasn't started, he's been heavily rotated in. So I think that's his kind of niche, and I think he does it well. I think he's a guy that Eberflus probably would never want to get rid of, because he could
Mm-hmm.
do just about anything you want, and you could throw him in and start anytime you need.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And I think, a big reason for the sack numbers not being, super, super high is, obviously the snap counts are not super, super high for him, but he does play a good amount of snaps. But usually when he's on the field, it is on those base down run defense snaps. Mostly when he makes his plays, it's not going to be on the third downs. It's going to be on the, first and second downs, because that's when he's out there. When third downs come, the Colts like to go to their NASCAR package and a lot of other type of packages out there where they get guys like Ben Banogu, Kaboko Toure, all those guys out there. But, Akadem Muhammad's a guy who I really like. We're actually going to start with two pass rushing clips from him. And that's, again, it's an area that he's not really known for. But I think his flashes in this area are really, really good. This first one is against the Chargers. He's right here on this side. And just look at that long arm there to get separation, dips under, and he's there to get that
He
quick
bends
sack.
the edge.
Yeah, he bends the
He,
edge. He used that long arm really well, which is actually funny because I talked to, this all season I've talked to Toure, Banogu, and Muhammad, and all three of them kept mentioning that long arm. And I
mhm.
know all three of them have worked with Robert Mathis. So I wonder if that's something that Mathis really, really preaches to those guys.
Oh, absolutely.
That long.
So Mathis will scream it until he can't talk anymore, that tackles hate to play below their bellies.
Mm-hmm.
If you're able to get speed and bend the corner a little bit and you have that long arm, they can't get a hold of you.
Yeah.
You're going to bend that edge and you're going to affect the quarterback. And I can absolutely see that being a Robert Mathis staple.
Yeah, For sure. And this clip's actually even more fun here of him rushing off the edge here. I mean, he's just dominates this rookie left tackle. I mean, just rolls through him,
Woo!
gets that sack. And this is what I mean, the flashes with him. Like I could have put his other sack in this game, which is outstanding. And he had a couple really good rushes in 2018, where it's just like you see it and they're like, holy crap, like do this every play, man. Like
Oh yeah. That's why, it's nice to think about Komoko coming back, Banagoo developing more in his second year, what have you. But shoot, Al-Quadin Muhammad kind of brings the juice himself, man. He may top out at 5 sacks per season or something, but he can affect the quarterback. And maybe that's not getting you a sack, but maybe it gives you a terrible throw and maybe even an interception.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to clarify for anyone watching this, I've when I post this clip before, I've had people talking about it. I'm pretty sure he doesn't get tripped by the lineman. Yeah, he steps over that lineman's foot. So yeah, it's definitely a clean bull rush here by Al-Qadim Muhammad. I love that wide 9 stance that he's in coming downhill. That's something that the Colts really love doing on passing downs. And yeah, just a rookie getting overpowered by a solid vet here. But let's get to some run defense from Muhammad. And this is actually, when I talked to him, he actually told me that he believes that. Yeah, we'll answer that in 1 second here, Lone Star. But yeah, Al-Qadim Muhammad believes that he's a top 5 run defending defensive end in the league, is what he told me. I wouldn't go that high, obviously myself, but I do think he's a really good run defender. Not to downplay what he told me. And you can see clips like this here. This is actually going to be the Titans starting right tackle this year. I think this is Dennis Kelly. And you can see that he's able to get his hands inside quick and then just rip him aside and get that tackle.
Setting the edge right there. He
Setting the
knows
edge.
how to do it.
Yep. And then you get the other.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, so we all know Jabal Sheard is no longer with the Colts, but that's something that made him so effective against the run.
Yeah.
Is maybe you're not attacking the backfield, but you're manipulating the tackle enough to contain that edge and make things more difficult for the running back to where they can't just go around. That's something that will never show up in the stat sheet, but that is so important for the defensive end to be able to do that.
Yeah. And another thing I kind of, I wasn't able to put into the clips here just because, for time purposes and such, but Muhammad has very high IQ. You can easily see that on the field in terms of how he sets the edge, where he gets in his depth in the backfield. But also you can see that in the screen game as well. I think he had like 4 or 5 tackles for a loss last year on just screen plays alone. Like he always reads them and diagnoses them and makes plays.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have a high IQ guy like that, a guy who's also strong at the point of attack, you get a guy who's a really good, edge defender who's not going to get those, those beautiful, pro football focused stop stats or anything like that. But he's going to make the plays, for the team and set things up for the other players to make an impact. Before we get to this next clip here, Lone Star Football Podcast, they asked, who do we expect to start opposite of Justin Houston at defensive end? He said he's been hearing a lot about Toure. Toure, we don't know if he's even going to be ready for week 1 as of right now. He's still on the PUP list. I think that if I had to guess, I would say they would activate him before the first game. That way they don't have to wait until after week 6. But we'll be able to get a good gauge on, where his health is if they don't activate him. But honestly, even if he were healthy, I would probably put money on Danico Autry starting at defensive end across from Justin Houston. He's been getting a lot of the snaps there in training camp. And he was actually a defensive end before he came to the Colts. The Colts just kind of moved him inside out of necessity and out of obviously his skill on the interior. So I think he's going to start the defensive end spot in rundowns. I think he's going to be really good in rundowns on the outside there. I mean, we're talking about guys setting the edge and being strong at the point of attack. I mean, he's got some of the strongest hands in the league. Especially talking about underrated guys here. I mean, he's very underrated in that regard. So I think he's going to be really good out there. But, Al-Qadim Muhammad and Ben Banago, I think, are going to rotate quite a bit on that defensive end spot. But do you think it's going to be Autry as well, Jake?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Now, we rarely see the same defensive four-man defensive front throughout the game.
Yeah.
They switch it up so much. So it's going to depend on the situation. But just in base stuff, I think there's a good chance we see Autry doing it. When he was so deadly 2 years ago in 2018, a lot of those sacks and pressures came from him being on the end. So I would expect to see that. And then until Toure returns, I would imagine that Muhammad and Banogu will be the next ends up in the wave. Um, but I would put Cordine probably as the fringe second, third um, defensive end. But gun to my head, I would say it's probably Autry, just based on the type of things they like to do. And
Yeah, then we get
obviously Buckner joining the team is one thing that kind of takes Autry's normal spot at three tech,
yeah.
and they still like Autry, so just putting him over there at left end kind of takes care of that issue there.
Yeah, and then we got another question here about Kamoko Toure. How I talk a lot about him being a third down rusher, but do I ever see him being more than that, or is it just his style? Yeah, he can definitely be more than that. I think he showed a lot last year that he could be a little bit more than just a third down guy. I mean, when he got on the field on base downs, he did look a lot better than what he did as a rookie. I know as a rookie, I could probably make a little compilation of it. There were a couple plays where he was just getting tossed by tackles and kind of moved a little easy as a rookie. But last year there were a couple games. I think the Chiefs game was a big one where he made a couple run stops where he was able to make guys miss in run defense and stuff and shed some blocks. So yeah, I think Kamoko Toure can be a good run defender. I don't think it's ever going to be his forte. His bread and butter is always going to be as a pass rusher, though. I mean that's what he's going to be in this league if he can stay healthy. So he could be the base starter across from Houston. I don't think that's what the Colts really want because they want more run defender out there in their base sets. But, come third down, come any passing down, they're going to get him out there because, we saw last year what he could do as a pass rusher. Personally for me, I don't know if you disagree, Jake. I think he can be a solid, like average run defender, but I don't think it's ever going to be his forte.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be totally necessary for him to be like an above average run defender in order for him to eventually be the starter. Um, like you said, there have been some instances where he's made some good run plays. Uh, with him being a rookie, I remember a couple of them. He had some nice run stops, but they came back on penalties.
Yeah.
Um, so they kind of floated out of everyone's head. So he's had some flashes, but I don't think he's ever going to be a better run defender than he is a pass rusher. And for some guys, that's okay. Like Yannick Ngakoue, for example,
Yeah.
he that they were actually pretty comparable coming into the NFL. Um, much better just fastball pass rusher than they were guys who could, stick their leg in and wait for the run to come to them. It just depends how good you are as a pass rusher. But I think he could eventually be the starter and be okay enough as a run defender to where, he's not a liability or anything. I don't think he is a liability now, but
Mhm.
he does have room to grow as a run defender.
Yeah, he did a lot of core work last off season from my conversation with him. He worked a lot on his core, and it wasn't really about adding muscle to his arms or anything like that to really gain that strength. There's a lot just in that core to be
Mhm.
stronger at the point of attack, and I think we saw some of the benefits of that last year. So yeah, I think he can be a good run defender. I mean, it's not going to be anything great or special, but Von Miller's never been an amazing run defender in his career, but he's such a good pass rusher. He's out there all the time, so you know
Right.
it's a push pull with it. I mean, if he's at the level that he was early last year as a pass rusher, you'll want him out there as much as possible. So,
Yeah,
it,
absolutely. It just
what it is.
depends how good you get at your specialty.
Yeah, exactly. But getting to the next clip with Al-Qadim Muhammad here. So we saw that he could set the edge on the last one here, but also he can shoot the gap here. So right here, he actually he crosses the guard's face, which is something that's really, really hard to do, especially in the NFL. He crossed this guard's face here, and he's able to make that play in the backfield. Uh, Again, just a really, really solid run defender. Neither of those plays were tackles for a loss, so they don't really show up as like, again, like those big stat things that we all love and stuff like that to quote and throw out there. But he just makes plays out there. That's what he does. I mean, he just makes very, very just solid and sound plays, and I think that's a big reason why he's just gonna always fly under the radar for fans. But getting to this last clip here again, just shooting the gap. I think he shoots between the tackle and the guard. And this
That
is
was
actually
so good.
this is from 2018. I think if you remember that, so that was from 2018. But yeah, again, I like a lot of what he brings to this team. I think he can be, you know, it, I know they want to start Autry to start this year, and we'll
Mhm.
get to this next clip here in a second. But if they had to start Al-Qadim Muhammad, I think he'd be perfectly fine. Like I don't see him as a liability on the field whatsoever, and I think that's really just a big thing when it comes to talking about players like this. If they're not going to ever be a liability, that's always a plus for your team. The less liabilities you have, the better your team's going to be. So yeah, I think that Al-Qadim Muhammad, if he had to start it all, or just be the rotational guy like he is now, I think he's just got a really good role for this team.
Yeah, I'd totally agree with that. And you know, before last year, he played a lot in his first year with the Colts, and then we expected him to play even more going into last year. And I remember asking then defensive line coach Mike Fair about what sticks out so much about Al-Quidi Muhammad. It was his strength, toughness, and just like he never quit.
Yeah.
Um, and we kind of saw that on the last one. There was a lot of quickness involved to it, but some guys let themselves get pushed around. Um, they just kind of lack the heat seeker factor in them. They just don't find their way towards the ball all the time. And he doesn't have that. Like he's just not easily pushed around. He stays upright and has good balance. Very tough. He's kind of a brawler, but still quick and fast enough to make plays in the backfield.
Absolutely. Well, really well said there. And he's got, I've been asking you each of these guys, what can you do to get better? I kind of think he's what he is at this point. Like, I think he can be a little bit better
Yeah.
with getting sacks and such, but he kind of is what he is, kind of like Jordan Wilkins. He kind of is what he is, and that's perfectly fine. You know,
Hmm.
you need the way I always balance, like when I look at draft classes and even when I look at rosters, is you need those high upside guys. You need those guys like Mo Alley Cox, Paris Campbell, those type of guys who can be really, really good. But you also need to balance it with guys who are really high floor and kind of just are what they are. Your guys like Al-Qadim Muhammad and Jordan Wilkins. So I think that those two guys are just a really clean balance of that. I mean, do you disagree? Do you think Al-Qadim Muhammad could be like a star at all in this league?
No, I think that's exactly right. I think he's a very adequate player who he is, and you don't really need him to do a whole lot more.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much detail and nuance to pass rushing that I'm sure Robert Mathis could give him a little laundry list of things to improve on. But I mean, to us, to the naked eye, he looks pretty effective. I think he tries hard. Again, I think he's smart and tough. I think he's a fluid enough athlete to be able to get where he wants to go. So I don't there's no big checklist for me on things he needs to improve. I think he's good where he is.
Yeah. And the one thing I want to add before we jump to our last guy here, and then we try to wrap this up before 2 hours. The one thing I want to add is that when he was talking to me, he did say he has one new pass rush move that he added to his repertoire this last offseason, something that he's been working on, but he wouldn't tell me what it is. So he told me to watch out for it this year is all he did. So
Something I want to see, and maybe this is it, is I want to see someone put into effect the fake spin from
yeah.
the outside again, because Robert Mathis did that to Anthony Costanzo in practice one day and damn near killed him. It was it was one of the dirtiest pass rush moves I've ever seen in my life, and I imagine it had to have the sideline screaming like. And I think I saw Justin Houston do it last year in one game.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds right. Um, God, I think I posted a video of it on Twitter or something sometime. It was either him or like a draft prospect or something. But God, I want to see that again.
I'm
Because
telling you,
when you when
Turay
you,
could hit it.
yeah, when you can do it right, it is devastating.
I'm excited. I hope it's that. I don't know what it is. I mean, I've seen Al-Qadim Muhammad. I mean, I know he has the long arm. I know he has the bull rush. I
Hmm.
mean, those are two that he has. I know he has it's not super bendy, but he has that dip and rip. So I'm curious what it's going to be. Maybe it's like a two-hand swipe. Maybe it's
It could be the Bosa brothers have made a living off
yeah,
that two hand swipe.
yeah, swipe or maybe a chop or something. I know that's something that Robert Mathis works on his guys with. I know Kamoka Ture really, really worked on that chop last year. Ture's go-to move is that long arm and then chop, and that's what he kind of did a couple of times last year. So It might
Mhm.
be a chop, it might be a swipe, not too sure. But getting to this next guy here, Grover Stewart. Grover Stewart, I feel like he was a starter on this team last year, and
Mhm.
I don't think people give him the credit that like all these guys were talking about are role players, but Stewart was a bona fide starter last
Yeah,
year.
they let go of the security of having Al Woods
Mm-hmm.
in order to get Grover Stewart on the field more.
Yeah, and it definitely paid big dividends. I mean, we look at this run defense last year. I remember everybody was complaining about the run defense after 4 weeks last season. It was one of the worst in the league through 4 games. And then after that fourth game, they basically made Grover Stewart the starter over Marcus Hunt, and then they got Jabal Sheard back. And
Hmm.
since then, I mean, the Colts I think finished. I think it was fourth best in the league in yards per attempt or yards per carry against them with like 4.1. And then I think they finished like seventh in the NFL in total rushing yards against them. So they went from, horrible the first 4 games. They got those two in the starting lineup, and then were one of the best run defenses in the league. So to answer, Santiago's question that we just got, yeah, Grover Stewart's definitely going to be the starter this year at that
Hmm.
nose tackle one technique spot alongside DeForest Buckner. I don't think that's really anything that was much in question this whole offseason. I don't think there was really anyone who was going to, usurp him there. So, yeah, Grover Stewart was a guy who I think was excellent last year, really broke out for the Colts, and is someone that I don't think people talk about enough here. But Jake, what do you think about Grover Stewart this point in his career?
Yeah, absolutely. I love his strength, and
Yeah.
he just sometimes he surprises you for how he moves for a dude that big because he's well over 300.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm pleasantly surprised for his effectiveness in this defense. I thought he was very well suited for the 3-4 defense. Um, but man, I'm very happy with the kind of just the nose tackle position in this defense. It can be so good and it can be so bad.
Yeah.
And I think he brings a lot of good to it because he brings the size that you would want even for a 3-man front, but he moves very adequately for the 4-man front. I'm really happy with what he brings.
Yeah, and the thing with the Colts defense, it's a gap shooting defense. Even your one technique, or even when he plays zero with some zero technique as well. He's supposed to control that gap, but he's also supposed to be shooting that gap.
Hmm.
This defense is predicated on disruption and creating havoc in the backfield. And you can't, you can have a guy Stewart's size, but they can't be like a plotter. They have to be a guy who's a really good athlete. And Stewart is an excellent athlete. I mean, we saw that with it. I think his pro day numbers were insane with all out of Albany State. That's why he went in the fourth round. But you can see that on film too. I mean, he just moves so well for a guy his size. And when I was talking to Matthew Adams this past offseason, he was telling me, one, that he thinks Grover Stewart's going to be like the breakout star from this defense, and two, he said there's probably not a crazier person in practice than Grover Stewart. I mean, Grover Stewart is just all energy all the time. And, having a guy play your one tech in this defense, they have to be that. They can't be a guy who takes plays off. I mean, not to throw Marcus Hunt or anything under the bus here, but early last season when Marcus Hunt kind of regressed back to what he was, after the 2018 season, there were times where he was getting driven off the line by the double teams, and that's where teams were getting those big run lanes there. So when they got Grover Stewart in that one tech spot, it was a completely different story. I mean, he was just not moved. He had super high energy. He was fighting through blocks. So we're going to look at a couple clips here. I mean, this first one is just the perfect embodiment of what he brought to the team last year. Right here, he's right in that one gap spot right here in the A gap, and he's able to break this double team pretty easily and get that tackle for a loss. I mean, again, just that strength that you mentioned, uh,
Hmm.
just pure power breaking through those guys. Yeah, I think that was Pouncey too. Pouncey and that's not DeCastro, I don't think, is it? No, DeCastro's on the
I
other
think
side.
the Castro right side.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
still, I mean, that's just a damn good play. Just tossing those guys
Hmm.
off and getting there. Um, we kind of see it here again in that A gap here on the one tech. Yeah, just one on one, just drives the guy in the backfield, and then that's Kalen Balaj right there, who we all joke about. Kalen Balaj, probably the worst running back in the NFL last year, but he's like a 240-pound back. Like he's huge.
Yeah.
Look how easy Grover Stewart just lifts him. I mean,
Grover's that. Yeah. You can just see his athleticism there.
Yeah. It's just oh, if you here's the play to see his athleticism here. He's
Hmm.
right up here on this snap here, and his center gets knocked over, or his guy gets knocked over, but he's able to get down the line
Throws him down, and
quickly.
yeah,
I mean, he's able to get down that line quickly for he's 330 pounds. This is 330 pounds strafing
I
down that line.
I would be willing to bet that Grover is one of those guys where he he doesn't get talked about a ton by the fans, but I bet you the Colts opponents, I bet you he's probably one of like the first five players they mention
Mm-hmm.
when talking about the Colts. He's just that kind of unsung presence.
Oh yeah.
Again, no, not sexy stats or anything, but like he's such an imposing player, and he's got to be a handful to deal with for these linemen.
Yeah. Oh, definitely in the O line meetings they talk about him. Like
Mhm.
that they're talking like, okay,
Yeah.
how are we gonna? We it's not really about driving him off the ball because that's not gonna happen. It's about just moving him off a spot to
Hmm.
get some positive yards. Like he's just that power. I think the big thing will be if the Colts make the playoffs this year, he'll be more on a national stage. You know, people will be able
Yeah.
to see his impact on the run game that way. And it's even going to look better with a guy like DeForest Buckner. I mean, like I've been mentioning, Nico Autry is great and stuff, but Buckner's just a different level.
Hmm.
Having those two guys inside, you have just an outstanding run defender, and then Buckner, who's an outstanding everything, right next to each other. They're just going to be so dominant. But again, just the one-on-one block here. I think this is Wiley, their left guard. Just no chance whatsoever in that one-on-one block there. I think
You're just never getting any push on him.
no,
You
and
don't see a lot of defensive linemen that just like dictate the grapple like that, and he
mhm.
just really does.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing with him. And honestly, I wish I could throw more clips in here and we could talk, about his entire game. But the one thing I would probably say he needs to work on would just be disengaging blocks.
Yes.
He holds up guys and he moves them wherever he wants. Even double teams. He does a great job of when running backs are running by, he gets his hand out and grabs them and
Hmm.
stops their momentum. I just want to see him be able to deconstruct a block and just push them aside and make a play. These clips here showed him doing that, but it's not the norm. The norm is, the norm is kind of what we saw in this last play here. He's able to move the guy, get him where he wants to go, and then he just sticks out his hand right here, and grabs him.
Hmm.
That's more of the norm that you see with him, which is fine. It's not a bad thing whatsoever. But getting to that next level is being able to just get off that block and create more penetration. But again, young player, super high upside. I think he can definitely do it.
Yeah, I think he gets by very well, obviously with his strength and his hustle, and he's got good awareness, and he gets those arms out and everything. He may not have like an elite reach, but he knows where the ball is, so he knows when to stick his arms out and everything. But like you said, if I was writing up a scouting report on him, I would say that I'd like him to diversify his attack a little more. Um, Maybe both in terms of setting up engagement with the blocker, but also hand battling. Um, he has been able to get by with just ripping off of guys because he's a lot stronger than they are typically. But I do think there's more he could develop in terms of hand fighting and just swiping and getting guys off of him. Um, because I do think he has another couple levels to get to. And like you said, if the Colts are on the playoff stage, all it's going to take is a couple wins on their part and good run defensive performances for him to start getting talked about a lot more by the national media. And
Yeah.
there are, you don't have to be a gaudy stat guy as an interior defender to be talked about. Guys like Snacks Harrison are very highly regarded around the league. Um, there was, I think it was Brandon Williams who was in Baltimore. A
Yeah.
lot of people talk about Linval Joseph. All it takes is being able to shine on national stages like this Chiefs game here. Um, and I think or not teams, but fans will start talking about him a little more.
Yeah. Yep. And then last clip we're going to show here is actually him deconstructing a block like I want to see, but just look at the hands there to get the
Yeah,
pass.
there were moves on that one. That was
Yep.
good.
Yep. And the thing is, we just don't see this enough from him. And again, it's not really what his game has ever been his whole career. So it's something that he's got to work on. But I really love the swipe here and then driving with that arm. And then, yeah, it's able to get off the block quickly. And that's just a beautiful play. I think that's what he can be. I mean, I don't think it's going to be something that he can do every single play, obviously, but he can make plays like this.
Yeah.
Again, he's kind of like a guy like Mo Ali Cox, except he's even younger, where the sky is kind of the limit. Like he can be a really, really, really good interior presence in this league.
Mm-hmm.
And I think having DeForest Buckner is only going to help him. But yeah, I'm really curious to see what his development this year. I really hope he has a big year this year. And I feel like I know he's going to at least be at the level he was at last year, which is going to be really good for this team.
I think it says, now he doesn't get talked about a lot, but I think it says a lot just on how much the Colts and the coaches have relied on him. He's been the starter for a full season. There's no inkling of him not still being that guy going into this. And they're trying to build an elite defense. Like they could have replaced him at any time if they didn't have the confidence in him. But it seems like they think he's the nose tackle they want to use to keep having this ascending defense, because you'd have to think they think their defense is going to be really, really good this year, especially with Buckner right there, and Grover's going to be a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. He is a free agent next year, but you think if he has a season like he just had, you think he's probably an easy re-signing for them, even with money. Money's not going to be tight really next off season, but in the next couple off seasons, money's going to be pretty tight. Do you think he's still a guy that, he's not going to be that pricey if he has a season like he had last year? So
I don't think so. I think he'd be a classic Ballard re-signing. He is so highly regarded in that locker room. There's not many guys that work harder than he does.
mm-hmm.
He's an important piece to one of the lines, which we know if there's a good lineman, offensive or defensive, Ballard wants him back.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if he has another solid season, he's an easy re-signing.
Definitely, man. Definitely. All right. So we went pretty long with this one today. I think we went like almost an hour and a half. So I think that's about as long as we went on the other ones, I think. So we were able to bring it all in there at the end. So
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, we went a little bit longer than the last ones, but not too
what
bad.
The people want, right, guys?
Yeah, all 5 of them watching right now.
Yeah.
Well, we usually get a couple hundred though once it actually posts though, so I think But I appreciate you guys who are still sticking in here. Just shout out to you guys for staying in this thing. I mean, that's awesome. I really appreciate you guys, hanging out with us here the last hour and a half or so. But Jake, the season's starting up here soon. Do you want to continue these during the season?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sweet.
Now, of course, I can I can be flaky when it comes to plans coming up and interfering, but I like doing this.
Yeah, we'll plan it throughout. We'll plan it like after the games or something on Sundays, like what day or so we can maybe do it. So maybe it won't always constantly be Thursday, but I definitely want to do one of these a week. Talk about, like games on Sunday. We can talk about aspects of the game once all 22 drops.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it'll be fun.
Break down like a play of the game.
Yeah.
Or like one offensively and defensively.
We'll see how long we can string out a stream of just one play. If we can string them out to somehow an hour.
Oh yeah, an hour and a half on one really nice Matt Eberflus blitz.
That would be really damn impressive if we did something like that. I think that would be accomplishment even for us.
Oh yeah.
All right, guys. So Jake, like I said at the beginning of the show, you'll be able to find his work over on Sports Illustrated. I am curious though, if your Colts job becomes available again, like what happens with the two things going on? I mean, I don't think you can work both at the same time, can you?
No, just from just the standpoint of the same subject matter. I've always been someone who I like to kind of focus my energy in one spot. I don't know. Well, that's something we'll have to cross that bridge if it comes. Yeah. I mean, my spot with the Colts still exists. COVID has just kind of made things harder for people to be able to, justify keeping everything how they've had it before. So That's very well understood by me. I'm fortunate enough to still have another day job as well. There's people who've lost a lot. So if the worst thing for me is I just have to find another place to have an outlet, I can live with that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, hey, all Colts and Sports Illustrated's a pretty good place to have another outlet there.
Yeah, like I said, that's somewhere when I very first knew I wanted to be a writer when I was a kid. That's somewhere I've wanted to have on my resume. So
Hmm.
it's happening.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So yeah, if you guys want to check out any film rooms or anything on these guys, I think Mo Ali Cox, I think I've written like 3 on him this off season. I think Jordan Wilkins, I've written like 2. Al-Qadim Muhammad, like 1 or 2. I did an interview with him as well. And Grover, I think I wrote 1 on, not
Mhm.
a ton on Grover, but yeah, you can go check those out on StampedeBlue.com if you guys want to, more interested in reading than hearing our voices here. But yeah, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. The people who stuck with us throughout the whole stream, and then the people who get to this point just watching the video afterwards. Really appreciate it. I'll probably post some clips of this on the old Twitter, get some talk out there. But yeah, Jake, anything you want to say before the first game coming up here? I mean, roster cuts are this weekend. Any Ballard surprise cuts that you think are coming this season?
Oh God. I I don't know. There hasn't been a lot of super big surprises come cut time in the last couple years because if someone gets cut, you totally understand why they cut that person so the person behind them gets more playing time or something.
Yeah.
It's I think we're all very on board with thinking that this is a very competent and smart front office. Um, so I really they'd have to do something crazy for me to really think they were doing something. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the craziest ones to me would be if like a guy like Jordan Wilkins or somehow like George Odom got cut. Then I would be like,
Right.
then I'd be like shocked and a little upset. Besides that,
That would be surprising if it was someone like George Odom. To me, that would mean, oh wow, they already think Julian Blackman is mentally and physically able to take that next step.
yeah.
Which crazier things have happened.
Yeah, I'm not throwing that out there, guys. Like I think George Odom's pretty safe. He's the best
Yeah,
special teamer on
but
the team. He's played a lot of snaps at safety. So
mhm.
I mean, he should make the team.
Yeah, I don't know. I would have said like if Marvell Tell was still active and they cut like Xavier Rhodes or something, I think that would have been surprising. But
Yeah.
you and I have talked about how we like Marvell Tell a lot.
Yeah.
Um, I Roosevelt Nix was a little surprising to me at first because
Yeah.
I kind of thought, damn, they're gonna run the hell out of the ball this year, and Nix is gonna be a big part of it. But coach kind of explained why that didn't wind up working out. So um, I don't think there's a ton of really surprising stuff they could do this year.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's just gonna. Yeah, no, I don't think there's really much that could shock me. I don't know.
Now we say that now we could be sitting here Sunday, the day after they make the cuts, and be like, what the hell was that all about? That I don't
What
think I don't.
they cut Ryan Delaire again. John Simon they cut again.
Oh God, I loved Ryan Delaire for that brief period. He was unblockable in training camp. He
And in
really was.
preseason. He had like 4
Oh,
sacks in the preseason.
he was a killer, man.
What
Ryan.
sucks is remember he made the opening roster and then he got cut for like Arthur
Yeah.
Mollett.
Well, yeah. Well, didn't they? No. Who was the guy they traded to Dallas a few years back? He was like a preseason superstar, and they traded him to Dallas. It was another edge defender.
I'm not sure. I think we all just fall in love with edge defenders in the preseason. I think that's what it was.
God, yeah.
But I actually know
Oh,
what it was.
it
You know what it
was
was?
Earl O'Kine.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Or another edge defender like that. It was during the Earl O'Kine era, though.
Earl O'Kine era.
Yeah.
No, I
Caesar
think
Rayford. Caesar Rayford. That was it. That was it.
I wasn't really following the team that hard back then, but
No,
yeah.
you were still with the Washington football team, but Caesar Rayford.
Oh my
Anyone
God.
listening, he was big time for that summer.
You know what I think it was with Delaire? I think he got cut for Al-Qadim Muhammad.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was because they
2018, yeah.
he made the roster initially, and they cut him when Muhammad hit the board.
Yeah, Muhammad was a pickup from because he was a Saints cut. That's right.
Yep. And
They,
Mullet, they dropped somebody from Mullet too, but
Arthur Mollett.
yeah, the Arthur Mullet, Lindsey Pipkins days.
Now on the Jets. Mollett,
Yeah,
that
I
is.
think they're both. No, I don't know where Lindsey Pipkins is, but that's the greatest name ever. But we
Yeah.
are definitely blessed to have a better Colts team this year. But
One of what, 13 former Colts on the Jets. If Kiefer's that was Kiefer's tweet, right? There's 13 of them.
dude, every time someone makes a tackle in that game for the Jets, they're gonna be yelling out "revenge game."
Oh yeah. If
Quincy Wilson revenge game, Arthur Mollett revenge game, Matthias Farley revenge game, like all of them, dude. They're all there.
a Jets Colts game this year would look very confusing
Nate
because
Harrison,
all
Hooper
these guys are
tackle.
such familiar faces, but we're like, oh hell, they're on the Jets now.
The thing is, though,
That's Terrell Basham getting a sack
they're all
for
training
the
camp
Jets.
cuts, though, is the problem.
Yeah, that's true. Except Quincy and Pierre.
It was a trade. Like
Yeah.
Quincy and Henry Anderson were trades, and then everybody else was a training camp cut.
Henry Anderson was. I'm so glad that worked out for him there.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Man.
All right, guys, that's enough of us shooting the shit here. But tune in. Maybe not next week, but maybe after the first game, we'll get back to streaming here. We'll try to do one every week throughout the season and talk. I like your idea. Talk about one play on offense, one play on defense. So it's not, knowing us, it might be long, but it's not super, super long.
We'll make it 45 minutes.
Yeah, like maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes. So people won't lose interest in it. But I appreciate you guys who are still in it. I think we still have a couple people in here right now, which is crazy. Maybe people are just fell asleep while watching it or something. But again, I appreciate you guys, and we'll check back with you guys here after week 1, and hopefully we're talking about a Colts victory.
A rare opening week victory.
Yeah. All right. How do I end?